Okay.
All right.
Are live.
We'll call this workshop to order. First item of business, anybody wish to address the board, public comment? No? Okay, we'll go right into the workshop. So, Larry, did you want to take the lead or John?
I do, and I am attempting to get my computer online. So I'm not sure why I'm having a difficulty. I apologize.
All right, I'm in a set too. Does everybody have the handout? Should have got a copy.
Oh, I don't.
I can't.
Did you get it?
Oh,
You did?
No, I didn't.
Please, thank you.
Oh,
Oh, everybody got sent it, right?
Somebody's coming with them.
I just have.
I just have the agenda.
No, you only got sent a draft. You should have gotten a draft. That one, yeah.
I didn't print
This is the local they brought.
it. I don't.
American.
I don't know where it came from, but I got it.
It came. Is the one that
Finally found a job.
Hans brought when he and
Yeah, you're doing good, Craig.
that's when he and
Thank you.
CDTA came to the
This is the,
economic, yeah.
okay.
Oh, that's, okay. Yeah, I got that.
I
Thanks.
have the agenda. I just don't have the other thing.
You guys, does everybody want this copy of the draft that was brought in at the workshop? Would you like to read it again? Gives good information. Yes, no?
Yeah. Yes. And when did we get the draft?
I feel it's tough because I don't think.
It doesn't mean anything. You can get lost in my email.
Well, the purpose of the workshop is whether Warren County elects to become part of the Capital District Transportation District, CDTA.
CDTA.
We have a legal overview. We have the benefits to the county, we have the cost to the county. And
And I am in, and I am going to, in a moment, be able to pull up a PowerPoint presentation I put together so that I can make sure everybody's on the same page. Really, my goal and my aspiration to start the discussion was to provide everybody with kind of clear guide rails. And what I mean by that is that I can clearly delineate the legal pieces so everybody has an understanding of what the field looks like and what some of the basic rules and assumptions are in going forward with the CDTA. So I think I'm going to need about 30 more seconds to get in, and then I will be able to start up. So I appreciate your patience.
happy day, first day of spring to everybody.
I think that was yesterday, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, it is? I thought it
Oh,
was
5:24 last night. That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the confusion. It showed up early.
Supposed to be
Yesterday.
50, so that'll be good. We still have a lot of snow.
And the delay is absolutely user error because my system just upgraded the operating system and I am
A lot of discussion.
Did we get the copies? They're still making.
I mean, let's make it copies.
Want me to? give a
Sure, you-
rundown?
We have dead time.
Yeah,
Oh,
we have-
there's man. Thank you, man.
You have one.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what you're getting is the, basically the proposal to merge, CDTA and Greater Glen Falls Transit. And I think, Larry will give you some explanation about that, but it was proposed to us by Mayor Collins at the, February, Economic Development Committee meeting. They had, the president, of CDTA was there as well. And basically Greater Glens Falls Transit, the current superintendent is going to retire. And they've been having trouble finding drivers. That's been their biggest challenge to keeping it going. And so they've had a discussion with CDTA, and CDTA would take over the responsibility that we currently see with Greater Glen Falls Transit. Their proposal to us said what CDTA, the 4 counties originally who formed the CDTA used a 0.25% mortgage recording tax fee. They collected this fee, and that's the requirement to provide to the CDTA. The amounts they get from the counties cover about 80 or about 15% of the CDTA operating expenses. The rest are covered by state and federal grants. And so that's what they suggested to us. As we went back and looked at it, we realized that we are already charging the 0.25% additional tax for the mortgage recording fees. And we've been doing that since 2014. And the money goes into our general fund. So, and that's when Larry will explain the legal aspects of this. So you ready?
Thank you very much. Sorry about that delay. I appreciate your patience. So what I put together is what I'm hoping is going to be a quick but concise overview of New York State law as it concerns CDTA and specifically, public authority law under New York State law. So there's a subsection under public authority law which directly addresses the Capital District Transportation Authority, which is also called the Capital District Transportation District. So to start, what is it? What is it that we're talking about? Well, the CDTA is a state-created public benefit corporation, which means it's a legal entity outside of the state of New York. But it is a state organized entity, which means it operates separate and apart from the state of New York, has its own board of directors. And the core purpose of why it was created in 1970 was to create a transportation district for 4 specific counties: Albany, Schenectady, Rensselaer, and Saratoga. And per the statute, the following specific counties, should these counties elect to become members, and those additional counties that are listed in the statute are Greene, Columbia, Montgomery, and Fulton counties. Warren County is not specifically listed in the original statute that created the CDTA back in 1970. And it's my understanding from conversations with individuals at the CDTA that Montgomery County is the first quote unquote non-founding county that has joined, and they just joined in this past August of 2022. And the statute goes on to say that any other county included within the Upper Hudson Planning and Development Region, as that term is designated by the state, may also join the CDTA. I have not had any success in determining or finding out what the Upper Hudson Planning and Development Region is. In my conversations with the CDTA, they've confirmed that there, in 1970, there was no such entity, and they're not aware of any entity having been designated by the state since 1970. So when this issue initially came up, and I looked at the statute, in the back of my mind, there was this initial assumption that Warren County was being considered because it's within that third group, that Upper Hudson Planning and Development Region. But I can state somewhat confidently this morning that as that enabling statute 1302 exists, Warren County is not specifically included in it for purposes of becoming a member of the CDTA. Participating counties under these statutes basically means the counties that are defined by section 1302. So first, the four founding, again, I use air quotes when I say founding, but the four initial counties of Albany, Schenectady, Rensselaer, and Saratoga, and then those additional four, Greene, Columbia, Montgomery, and Fulton. Participating counties does not mean cities or towns. So the framework of membership in the CDTA is a county only issue. Municipalities within a county cannot opt in to being members of this transportation district. It's only the county at the county level that can opt in. So the takeaway on this first slide is the conservative approach. If Warren County moves in the direction of wanting to become a member county of CDTA, the conservative approach is having the legislature amend the statute to specifically include Warren County before taking that step. The quicker, practical method would be following the process and procedure that's provided by the statute to become a member, having the CDTA accept the county as a member, subject to changing the statute after that. My hope is that most members of the board have gotten to know me in the last year and a half to the point where my legal recommendation would be seeking to amend the statute to include Warren County if Warren County was seeking to move forward before Warren County elects to become a member of this transportation district. Any questions on that first slide and really that foundation question that I can try to answer?
So we do have the EDC regions, Capital Region being one of them. That includes most all of those counties, plus Warren County. So maybe no Upper Hudson planning ever came about, but there is another regional council that came about that includes those counties.
I'm limited to reading the statute and what the enabling statute states as far as the intention of what counties. And to be clear, there's a number of transportation districts that have been created under state law for various counties and portions of New York State. This statute I interpret as being very specific. And for whatever the legislative mistake or oversight, I shouldn't say mistake, that's not the right word. But back in 1970, I would guess or presume that the legislature had an intention of creating this additional planning and development region that they listed in the statute, because they say, hey, if your county is part of this development region, then you can also in the future opt in as a member. But the CDTA has been unable to identify what that is. And I certainly can't, through my efforts, identify what the Upper Hudson Planning and Development Region is. Because it doesn't appear that the state of New York ever designated it, or if they did, we're not able to find it. So, for me, that's kind of a foundation question, and I apologize. I really didn't start where I wanted to because of my delay in my computer. My goal is to provide, like I said, guide rails, but the rest of that is please do not interpret anything on these slides or what I'm saying as advocating in any way, shape, or form in either direction or any direction during the course of the discussions. My goal is to provide some foundation information, which hopefully lays a platform for this board to engage in a discussion and a workshop type discussion of ideas, options that might be open and available to Warren County concerning transportation, whether it's with the CDTA or otherwise. So the next slide addresses an additional portion of that same statute, which is important, which is what does joining this district include? And the statute is very specific and clear that any counties that join the district means that it's all of the lands of the county, all of the water of the county, all of the lands underwater of the county, and it specifically lays out that it includes all rivers, lakes, bays, and harbors as being part of the transportation district. In my conversations with the CDTA, they were very, very clear that they do not operate any vessels on any waters. And that it was communicated that they don't have any intention or plans to operate any vessels on any waterways within the transportation district in the foreseeable future. While one can go back to 1970 when the statute was passed and place on it a perception or belief that it was intended to reflect possibilities of ferry service or other services on the Hudson River between some of those founding counties, specifically Rensselaer and Albany. The statute as written by opting in a county is in effect saying that this transportation district has the ability to provide transportation services, not just on the lands, obviously, but it's the water, lands underwater, rivers and lakes that would be of issue. And I think it would be malpractice for me not to point out to the board that our bodies of water in Warren County under the statute do qualify as falling under the authority of the CDTA by statute. And I don't believe that the county of Warren or even the CDTA by resolution or agreement can opt out of what the statute provides for. So the second point would be that if there were going to be requests to amend this statute to include Warren County, there may be a desire on the part of the county to request an exclusion concerning those additional areas of water and land underwater, because it would apply to our lakes, in theory. The structure of the CDTA, they're governed by a board of directors. And the board of directors are responsible for running and overseeing the Capital District Transportation Authority, the CDTA, which is the operating unit within this transportation district. And I've laid out on this slide, which is pretty full, just so it's clear for everyone what the structure is of and the organization of the membership. So the statute says that the board has to have between 8 and 15 members, not less and not more. And the governor appoints each member upon the advice and consent of the Senate. Now, the four founding or the four original counties have members as listed. I'm not gonna go through all the detail that's in the slide, other than to state that Albany County appoints or recommends 3 members from a list of 6 names. And the governor will then, from that list of 6 names, appoint 3. The majority party appoints 4, the minority party appoints 2 to the list. And that structure holds with each county with different numbers. So Schenectady, Rensselaer, and Saratoga County all or each have 2 members each that are on the CDTA Board of Directors. And each county would provide then to the governor a list of 4 names, with the majority party of each county selecting 3 names, the minority party selecting 1 name. And from that list of 4 names, the governor choosing which 2 end up on the CDTA. The last portion is that other counties that elect to participate in the CDTA, and I use as the example Montgomery County, since they've elected last year to be a member, they are to receive 1 member on the board, and the governor appoints from a list of 2 names, with the minority and the majority party each submitting 1 name for the governor's consideration. So, and then the last category is the labor union has the majority membership labor union for the CDTA also is able to appoint 1 non-voting member to the CDTA. And that person serves for a 5-year term. Now, up top, you'll see that I underlined that this section is effective until the end of, until March 28th of this year. That has been the basic structure for the CDTA, as far as I can tell, going back to 1970. There's been a slight change that will take effect next week, March 28th of 2023, in that the legislature changed this statute to include an additional voting member. And it's that top category that I added in, which is called a transit dependent individual. So 1 member will be appointed by a local or statewide transit advocacy organization for the governor's approval. So in addition to the 3 members from Albany County, 2 members from Schenectady, Rensselaer, and Saratoga each, and that 1 additional member that will be coming on from Montgomery County, there will be 1 member who's a transit dependent individual that participates as a voting member of the Board of Directors effective March 28th. So my interpretation is if Warren County is added to the statute and Warren County elects to become a member, Warren County will submit 2 names to the governor, 1 from the majority party, 1 from minority party of Warren County, and then the governor would determine which of those names becomes the name that's then appointed to the Board of Directors for Warren County if we become a member. Electing membership, it's a simple resolution that the Board of Supervisors would pass. The process is fairly straightforward on joining. Once that resolution is passed, membership becomes effective upon Warren County filing a certified copy of the resolution with the CDTA, with the Secretary of State, and then providing notice by certified mail to each of the county clerks for each member county. The cost of membership is straightforward, clear, and not a matter for negotiation with the CDTA per statute. Under tax law, section 253(2), it's the additional mortgage recording tax amount of 25 cents per $100. And it's paid directly to the CDTA. I cannot say with 100% certainty the mechanism, but I believe based on what I've seen from Saratoga County is that those funds flow to the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance and then flow from there to the CDTA. Whereas currently, I believe they're retained by Warren County. And this is the additional mortgage tax, which was the subject of a resolution last Friday to seek the extension of that additional mortgage tax from the state legislature through home rule law. And then as far as numbers, it's not a fixed number, it's whatever the number is for a given year. So the numbers, again, that my understanding of the 2021 value of the additional mortgage recording tax was just over 1.5 million. The 2022 number was over 1.3 million. And those would be the numbers, that's the cost of membership. Meaning every county that's a member dedicates that quarter, that 25 cents on $100 amount to go to the CDTA for purposes of the CDTA then providing and including the county in this transportation district. Any questions before I move on? The next couple of slides, I think, are fairly straightforward and quick.
Thanks, Larry. Can you tell us how the mortgage recording taxes compare to recent pre-COVID years? No. Okay.
I don't have that information. I only pulled up the
Is
last
it
two.
safe to say that they're a little bit higher than maybe 18 and 19? Or
I'll have to go back and look at those. I think we looked at them once and it looks like it's somewhere between 1.25 and 1.5
so it's not a
every year. So it's
substantial
not a
difference.
substantial difference.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Larry, I've got a ton of questions, but just from a funding standpoint, the current, our general fund currently takes in the 0.25 additional mortgage tax to the tune of roughly 1.5 million. In past years, it's been 1.2. Yes, and that was correct, 1.2 to 1.5 in the last 4 or 5 years. So that would all have to be dedicated to the Capital District Transportation Authority by statute.
By passing the resolution to join and elect membership, you are also designating those funds to go directly to the CDTA on an annual basis.
Okay. And also, we would give up control of our waterways, although we could make maybe a carve out or whatever, but we give up control of our waterways, we give up control of this and that.
Well, if I could just,
Well, it says that in there.
yeah, I that is legally correct. And if it's the will of this board, we would look to we would look to clarify that is not, that those bodies of water, Lake George, Hudson River, Schroon Lake, I don't want to leave anyone out. We have plenty of water, are not going to be included in the transportation district for purposes of the board of directors. You know, I don't think anyone imagines, I don't even think the CDTA would imagine or ever want the CDTA ferry service on Lake George.
Right.
But you know, when you go into negotiations, you just make sure that everything is tied tight in your interests. And the original statute doesn't appear to clearly think about Warren County as a member. So the intention on water and land underwater, really, I firmly believe is geared toward ferry service down toward Albany County and Rensselaer County.
Right.
But we want to clarify that.
Right.
You know, so but that, again, my point being is I don't want that to distract or become the focus of the bigger conversation of transportation during the meeting today. It's just something we have to be aware of and address.
And obviously was originally put in place. Washington County and Warren County were not part of that because I really believe that we're not really part of the capital district, even though from some agencies, they like to believe we are part of that. But the reality of it is, if you look at what counties are part of this and they're controlling it and have all the say and have all the benefits, this is very, Washington, Warren County, it's a non-starter for me. This is this is definitely not benefiting Warren County. And it's definitely hurting us financially. So I got 10 questions here that I'm sure I know the answers to, but there's a reason, like I said, why Washington and Warren County wasn't even part of the original. It's because they don't consider it part of the capital district and the services really don't extend here. Now, there's a few little things that may happen nowadays, but it's so minor that financially it's a real detriment. So thanks.
So on the next slide, please don't try to read it. It'll hurt your eyes. The only purpose is to highlight the fact that by statute, the CDTA has very specific powers that are provided to it. Basically, it's the powers that would be provided to any public benefit corporation in the state of New York concerning how they execute their assigned task in the transportation district. They also have special powers that are granted to them by statute. Should there be a move toward membership, my office would dedicate more time to providing a brief on those general and special powers so that the county in the decision-making process was fully aware of what they are and what they look like. What I also found and wanted to just bring to the board's attention is when Montgomery County joined the district, they did create a service plan for Montgomery County, which I should be able to click on and show you. But it's basically the top, what's underneath there, that welcome aboard Montgomery County is the beginning of the policy. And it basically lays out, when you look at it, and I will have these slides provided to the public and to the board. This is the CDTA's website that you're now taking a look at. And what you'll see is basically they then publish what for Montgomery County it looks like as far as service maps, schedules and routes. And then oh, you're not actually seeing that slide.
Need to share that thing.
Yep. There we go. So they provide basically through the CTA what the service maps are going to look like, the routes of service in Montgomery County, how it impacts the city of Amsterdam, what the schedules are, the route numbers, and then a detailed listing of what those routes are going to be. And I only provided for the sense that Warren County, if electing membership, would receive similar routes from the CDTA as designated by them to be the appropriate routes for Warren County. Any questions? That's kind of just the quick legal overview of CDTA. And to the degree that the board wants to talk about costs and benefits, we can certainly do that as well.
I have. Okay. John or Larry, why, if I'm reading the Greater Glens Falls Transit Systems indicates it's in a good financial situation. It's had a reduction in usage. Why do they want to do this now?
It's primarily driven by the person that's running Greater Glen Falls Transit is going to retire. And I think that was the timing, and I believe that's the end of March. So they were looking to do this the 1st of April. They've been in discussions with CDTA for several months. And when it was by the time it was presented to us, they'd already been in discussions for, again, several months. So basically, if I could just review, we've looked at the options, and there are basically 4 options before us on this. And one is, so as we left the meeting, Mayor Collins stated that he was going to do this merger, but from what Larry told you, Glens Falls doesn't really have the authority or the ability to merge with CDTA. It has to be the county. So the option, obviously, the first option is we accept this merger, we become part of CDTA, and we give them the 0.25 or 25 cents per $100 of mortgage recording tax. Keep in mind, and just briefly on mortgage recording tax, we charge 1.25%. Previously, it was always 1%, and that is broken down between town and county and various, there's a standard breakdown on that, but the additional 0.25% we chose to add when after we were given that authority by the state, and we did, and it's been going into the general fund. If we accept this, that 0.25% of the mortgage recording tax that's currently going to the general fund would go to CDTA. And Greater Glen Falls would be absorbed into CDTA. They'd take responsibility for all the bus routes that Greater Glens Falls Transit currently has. Another option is, we do nothing. There's the possibility of Glens Falls Transit not being able to continue this service, and bus service in the area is eliminated. Another option, third option probably, is we take it over as a county. Right now, you see in the paper, Glens Falls, between Glens Falls and Queensbury, it's about $173,000 a year. They contribute to Glens Falls Transit. The rest is through state and federal grants. We could take that responsibility on as a county and continue to run our own service, or we could subcontract or contract out to another private entity to take over the bus services that we have currently in the county. So that's where we stand today, and so open to discussion and questions.
I have a second question, followed by about the waterways. Is there anything that prevents existing boats, let's say the private industry that owns all the tour boats on Lake George, could they decide to sell to the CDTA and turn that into a public transportation?
I think as you look at this, and Larry can clarify, but it basically their ability to use the waterways is to establish a transportation system on the waterway. So they wouldn't take over the Mohican. It just goes out and sails around the lake. If they decided at some point they wanted to run a ferry service from Fort William Henry up to Ticonderoga on Lake George, they would probably have the ability to do that under the current statute.
And it was clearly communicated to me that there's absolutely no interest in buying a boat.
Well, that's kind of my question. The Mohican could be used, if it's not transporting cars, it could be transporting people up from, let's say, Albany, from Lake George to Ticonderoga.
Which is why we would want to help clarify the statute to remove that portion from it. But again, what has been clearly communicated to me by the CDTA is they have no interest in boats or waterway transportation. So it's a concern, certainly with Lake George. It's a concern, but I believe it's one that should not distract from the underlying issue of true transportation needs of the county and whether the CDTA meets those needs or there's another option that's available to the county.
Dennis. Dennis. Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
You're Dennis.
That's on there. I definitely not interested in doing this unless in the contract we exclude any rights to waterways. I'm not going to get into that nonsense. We have a lot of private businesses on Lake George. If they want to move people from Lake George to Ticonderoga like they used to do, I'm sure one of those businesses would be happy to step up and do that for whomever wants it. But I don't want to lose control of that at all. So that's a definite given. The other thing I'm concerned about is if you read through the draft that we got, the Lake George riders represent a third of their business in season. And I have a very good working relationship with Glens Falls Transit. They do on occasion change the routes, which is a serious problem. You're here and you're working and you got a job someplace and they go by your place at 7:30 in the morning and then they change the route and you're out there 7:30 and no bus comes. Creates quite a dilemma. So I would like to know what kind of guarantees we have about the service they're expecting to give. And if we're going to have any input into that.
So they did at the Economic Development Committee, the CDTA did state they would maintain all the current routes that Greater Glens Falls Transit has done. They wouldn't commit to adding any additional routes until they studied that. But they did say, now I don't know if, I'm not aware of changing routes or how that impacts. But
So you're telling me they could, after a period of time, eliminate the bus to Lake George?
they could probably do that if
I'm not, count me out. I'm not doing that, geez. We don't have enough mass transit in Lake George to start with. You call Uber, you can wait half an hour for somebody to show up. We have no mass transit. This is our only mass transit, and it's absolutely crucial to our working force. But I need some guarantee that they're going to keep it. If there's a chance they can eliminate it, I'm not signing up.
We had Ben and then
I think Claudia had her hand up
Claudia.
first.
Okay.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I will echo what the supervisor from Lake George said. This is an important service for our community, not just for our workforce, which I was going to mention, but also our students in Glens Falls are using the bus to get from one side of the city to the other. But also, it's an important measure for people around the county, our visitors, to get from place to place. I mean, the bus goes to Bolton too, as far as I understand. So I think that we do need to look at it, and not to mention, having mass transit, public transportation available for environmentally friendly purposes too, to get people to have other options. Maybe they're going to bike part of the way and then they'll take a bus the rest. But I think the connection to CDTA would be beneficial because it helps us then open up routes to all over the capital region to get people to and from here from Albany. I think would be beneficial. I do have concerns about the cost. I mean, right now, this sheet says that our municipalities are contributing $173,000.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if that includes anything from the municipalities of like George and Bolton. It only says Glens Falls and Queensbury are participating. So maybe there's a way we can either, if we have to go back to the state legislature and ask them to amend the statute, could we not ask them to amend it so that we're not contributing the 0.25% of our mortgage tax? And if that's not possible, then maybe there is another way for the county to step in and assist. I know that the reasoning is not just because the one person's retiring. I mean, that's kind of like on the forefront, but they've been having trouble. And I think they need some more assistance to make it sustainable and expand operations in our region if we don't go with CDTA.
If I could just kind of clarify on, and maybe even highlight that their operating budget for Glens Falls, the transit system is $2.1 million.
Right.
And a substantial, overwhelming amount of that funding does come through federal and state operating assistance and grants. When you look at the numbers that are in that draft report, $250,000 comes from fares out of a $2.1 million budget. And $173,000 comes from municipalities. So, the current municipal investment is fairly low compared to the 0.25% of 1% number that's required by statute. The second point and the second question is why I think amending the statute to include Warren County and to clarify and exclude waterways in Warren County would be reasonable. I'm hard pressed that from what I've seen, that a request to pay less than the percentage that everybody else pays would be well received, which is 1/4 of
I
1%
how
of
they
the
could
mortgage recording tax.
expect us to pay that if they're not going to expand our service.
Yeah.
Ben, and then Mike.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to comment on some of the concerns that I've heard. I've had a long time relationship with Mr. Sopcich. Our sons went to school together, played sports together. And I've also spoken to Mayor Collins. The whole purpose of this is to get back, well, to expand or get back to the glory days of the transportation. Currently, as I understand it, they don't have a succession plan when the commissioner retires. They're down to one full-time mechanic. That individual goes out sick. They're in difficult shape. Some of the cancellations or rerouting of routes were caused because they didn't have the drivers. They were able to recruit a number of drivers from the capital region, the southern capital region, who are very interested and excited about coming to work in the Warren County, Greater Glens Falls area. The town / village of Lake George does contribute. So does the town of Bolton. And I don't know if there's other entities. The plan is within a reasonable period of time is, again, this is what I've been told, is to create an expansion so that there may even be opportunities to bring people from Warrensburg area, maybe even Bolton area, down to the Glens Falls, so that they could even come into Glens Falls area. And the same thing for residents of Washington County. I'm very interested in not just hearing the perspective of my board member, the fellow board members, but also the business community, how this impacts Glens Falls Hospital, Finch Paper, a lot of our other major employers. as well as the seasonal people along the lake. I want to hear, how this could impact them, the people who drive our economy. So that's what my perspective is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that I looked at when I watched the video of the meeting was the mayor said, he said that the CDTA would guarantee no changes to the routes for 3 years. That stood out to me. And I think the big problem is we're thinking about what are we going to get for our 1 point whatever million dollars. And the question I have is, do the federal and state subsidies that currently amount to like $1.6 million, will they still go from CDTA or from Glens Falls Transit to CDTA? If you add the 1.6 plus our 1.5, maybe it's over $3 million. So if we're going from an operating budget of $2 million to now $3 million, what are we going to get for it? And if all we're going to get for it is 3 years guaranteed of our current routes, then I don't think I can support this. What I'm looking for is more of a guarantee in terms of what we're going to get and what they're going to pursue to make happen. So that's kind of where I am.
And let me, if I could,
Dennis and then Hillary. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, all good points from everybody. The way I'm reading this is the budget's 2.1 for Glens Falls, Greater Glens Falls Transit. They have issues. They have no succession plan. They have a shortage of drivers. Okay. They have a total budget of 2.1 million, of which 70-something% is federal and state funded, of which Queensbury gives 173,000, of Glens Falls gives, I'm not sure, a little lower. And I think even Lake George and Bowden Landing also contribute. So in my mind, as a businessman, we had this one option with the capital district that we can surrender 1.5 million and a ton of autonomy to them, which scares the living bejesus out of me to any government authority to give them a lot of autonomy over us here in Warren County, or we can fix the Glens Falls or assist the Glens Falls, Greater Glens Falls transportation. To me, that's the smarter move, not only from a logistics standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. So I'd be willing to work on trying to help the Greater Glens Falls Transportation Authority become a little more viable, maybe even increase routes. Already, you said that there's some, Ben said that there's some drivers coming down from the southern part of Albany and so forth. But to me, this is the local issue. 99% of it is local issue, not capital district issue. And them, us giving them millions of dollars to have them keep what is already a local issue, just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'd be open to helping Greater Glens Falls Transportation Authority find some fixes. I'd be open to that, but not being part of the capital district. That's a 100% no for me on that part.
Dennis?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to make a general statement first. I am very interested in mass transit of any kind and all kinds. But I think that we're getting in trouble with this because we're going to lose control. According to your chart there, we're only one of 11 members. And I know that we're not carrying a lot of weight in that one of 11. So my concern is about the control, being able to register a complaint, have something done about it, being able to control the number of routes we have and when they stop them and when they start them. I don't know. Makes me really nervous. Thank you.
I just wanted to, if I could clarify one word that I heard, which was guarantee used. And legally, I can clearly state that there will be no guarantees. There may be representations of service, but the CDTA governs themselves through a board of directors. There won't be a contract that's executed. There won't be a memorandum of understanding. There'll be a resolution that the board passes electing to join the CDTA that then gets filed. So I don't want to leave in the air a misconception that the CDTA is in a position, or that Warren County could require or demand, quote unquote, a guarantee on any aspect of the agreement.
I echo Supervisor Dickinson and Supervisor Beatty. I think all of us here want to help Greater Glens Falls Transit. John, you mentioned the other option is the county takes over and helps them navigate this, and we maintain control versus handing it over to Capital District Transit Authority. What are the cost benefits? Why or why not? Why are we advocating more, or it seems to be advocating more for CDTA versus us kind of controlling our own destiny and taking it over?
I appreciate that. Thanks. I don't think we're advocating one way or the other. I think what that is, we just looked at what the possible options are. I don't know the financial ramifications. If we take over, I think they'd be the same, at least starting point with what Glens Falls Transit has right now. We'd accept contributions from the municipality served. We'd charge fares, and we'd get the same. And I think I believe this is true. The subsidies we get from state and federal for our transportation system in Glens Falls would then, we couldn't add that into our piece of the deal. Those would probably just transfer directly to the CDTA in operating and assuming the responsibility to operate transportation network up here. So it wouldn't be something we could say, hey, we get this much from the state, we're going to give you that too, and would reduce our fees. I don't think that would happen.
But in keeping a local option, there's certainly an ability to do intermunicipal agreements with the municipalities in Warren County, and to work through the process of determining what level of funding municipalities would provide. And you could do that even with the CDTA, just to be completely non-positional. You know, a decision to join the CDTA could require contributions back to the county from municipalities in certain percentages based on perceived use. And that certainly could happen. I apologize. Keeping the current transit system going as well.
There may be other options for working with CDTA as well that we haven't explored yet, but they did acknowledge Washington County was not going to become a member of the CDTA, but because some of the routes we have serve Washington County, they'd have to have some kind of ancillary agreement with Washington County so that those routes could continue.
Can I just interject, Mayor Diamond? Can you enlighten us on your term when you were operating this through the city?
Well, first of all, we wanted to maintain the routes that we had established, going forward. But we also found out that it was a wonderful opportunity for the working class people in the city and in the local economy to get transportation back and forth. What has been stated today is an accurate assumption, is that the Glens Falls Transit cannot continue to maintain the routes independently like they are. They just can't find employees. That's the biggest problem that they have there, is maintaining drivers and maintaining employees. They have the similar problems that anybody else. Well, the majority of our employers are still all faced with that same problem, maintaining employees. Not to get sidetracked, but if you look at, the city's EMS, fire department, our numbers are down 5 to 6 employees. Our police department, we have 2 individuals now patrolling the A-line on 11 to 7. We just can't find employees. So it's going to put a real burden on the way it's structured now to be successful. So if there are other options where the county's interested in helping, I've heard that comment that the other communities are willing to help. Maybe that's the direction we got to go. But the challenges ahead of Glens Falls is maintaining employees for riderships, period.
It's the employees.
Yeah.
Who's Frank?
Yeah, yeah. If the county should decide to join this public benefit corporation, is there any help? I mean, say in 3 years, things don't go so well. Can we say, that's it, we're gonna pass another resolution and we're gonna move on?
My best legal opinion is I don't know. And I state that because since 1970, there's been 4 core counties that were in this district. They've remained in the district, and there's no language in the current statutes that talk about how a county removes itself. Montgomery County last year is the first non-founding county to join. So I can't I cannot see through comparison how that would occur, because it has never occurred in the history of the CDTA. And the statute doesn't clearly, while it provides the method for electing membership, I did not see a provision in the current statute that provides a method for removing yourself and what that looks like.
Stop paying them.
Because in part, you're also, the CDTA has, well, I'm going to stop there because anything further would be speculation.
Dennis, you had it.
You know how this pains me, but I have to agree with Doug.
I'm writing it down, Dennis.
Write that down. Wholeheartedly. I think that we should step back. I think we should sit down with Scott and anybody else we think is going to give us some information and figure out definitely what's wrong with the Glens Falls Transit and what it would take to get it back on its feet. I would much rather pursue that. I don't want the county taking it over. I can tell you that right now. That's off my list. But if I don't mind stepping in as the county or as the individual towns who are benefiting and see if we can put something together for this Glens Falls Transit and keep it going.
It's all good points. I think, sometimes we might forget about the economic benefit we get from linking to the capital district also. And I'm just not sure how to weigh the differences, right? But I think what we need to do is get the mayor back here and get CDTA back here. And as Dennis was just suggesting, let's figure out the details between all these different options. And then we can make a decision. Right now, I don't think anyone here would even begin to support this. So we need, my suggestion is we need more information. We need to get it from all sides.
Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Exploring other options. Why not? Let's do our cost benefit analysis. Let's do our due diligence, which we're required to do. That's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. How much time? I don't know. I'm very concerned about the fragile nature of the operations right now. I mean, I'm hearing vacancies in drivers that are very significant and are affecting routes, and they affect the most vulnerable among us, right? People that rely on those services to pick up groceries, go to work, etc. Not to mention support our tourism economy. So I think this discussion, because it's going to take some time to work through this, I think that some discussion needs to take place in terms of what can we do while we're involved in this process to ensure that at least the critical elements of this mass transit program can be maintained going forward. For example, I know Capital District has been helpful in many ways to this point in time to Glens Falls. I know they're having difficult time even finding certified mechanics, even working on the vehicles. Is there any kind of contractual arrangement that can be entered into on the short term with Capital or with anyone else
to help with these operations to ensure that they are maintained. Until we work through this question of how best going forward. You know, in the back of my mind, I mean, we have the mayor who represents this municipal department, and we have our chief mass transit executive coming to us and recommending for this. So they've obviously have had to go through this process in their own mind, and I'm sure the mayor doesn't come to us lightly. I'm sure that he has good reason to believe what he believes. But again, our processes are going to take some time, and I think we need to ensure that over the next 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, whatever the amount of time is, that those buses roll. It used to be that a lot of the seasonal drivers, and we're coming into our seasonal period, of course, that Glens Falls Mass Transit would come from the schools. The CDL bus drivers would come and work for Glens Falls Mass Transit, and the amount of drivers in Glens Falls Mass Transit would increase significantly to handle all the additional routes. Well, those avenues for drivers have diminished, and so I think some discussion in terms of what we can do while we go through this process needs to take place, because the last thing we want to do is fail our communities. Last thing we want to do is fail our constituencies. That's unacceptable, I'm sure, to everyone in this room. So what we can do on the short term while these deliberations go on, I think is very important. Thank you. Bonnie?
I think my colleague from Bolton said it well, and I will agree with him. If this is going to take time, we have to do something to make sure that the service doesn't get interrupted. And from what I'm hearing, if Glens Falls Transit really is in bad shape, I mean, what other entity do we have around to take this over other than CDTA? Because I don't want to see it be a county run operation either. We can't do that. So what are we as a county going to do to step in to help this?
Well, maybe we
situation?
should subsidize them, try to help them pay for drivers. If we have to pay a higher price, we'll have to check with the city. I mean, we're gonna have to reach back out to the mayor and Scott to find out if there is any stopgap things we can do other than that. Doug, you had a comment?
Yeah, couple points. If we have a shortage, I can't believe the CDTA doesn't have a shortage either. So this isn't gonna be just because we give them 1.5 million doesn't mean all of a sudden they're gonna be filling our routes. They probably have shortages too. If there's additional routes, where are they gonna get the drivers? I mean, they're gonna absorb the drivers that we have. And then they're gonna say, hey, wait a minute, guys, you're four drivers short. Yeah, I know. Well, you're gonna need to fill them. That doesn't solve the problem. By joining up with them, it doesn't solve it, other than it gives them $1.5 million of our money that we now put in the general fund. Let's help our local Glens Falls Greater Transportation Authority. If that means let's have an emergency meeting next week, I'll be glad to sit in on it and help out and give my ideas on how we can get, maybe come up with some options to solve this, because I do not want to have them go down when we're supplying workers to Lake George region, to our tourism industry. I don't want that stopped. No one does. I know that.
We also need to find out about the rolling stock and what shape it is, and
there's a lot of other things.
there's other things we need to do, so we could get the mayor.
Correct.
But Scott back up here.
You can't afford to wait 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. If that restraints, we need to get this going now. But I really, from my business experience, it's not always better. Trust me. I can tell you. It's not always better. In fact, a lot of times it stinks. So let's solve our problem. I think we got the expertise in this room, and I know that Greater Glens Falls has a lot of smart people too. So let's get together. Let's solve it. We can do that.
Anybody who hasn't commented, wish to comment, Supervisor Droth.
Sure. Actually, it sounds like there's consensus on this. Desire to help Glens Falls. So the question is,
the path forward? Is the committee structure that's in place the right form to pick this up and look at it, or formulation of a smaller subcommittee immediately to meet with the principals or the county administrator's office? Just, I think we could probably bring it down to what is the path forward immediately?
We'll set up a meeting as soon as we can with the mayor and Scott and try to get out some of these points to them. I mean, if you want to do it in committee setting, we just have to meet the criteria of calling committee.
Was the city team invited today?
No, I didn't ask him because really today was to shake out the monetary aspects of this. Because there's quite a bit of money that was involved. And if we went ahead with what they had proposed, the merger or us joining the capital district, it was monetary. So we can go back to the mayor. It's very good points brought up. So Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, to play off that about the monetary. Is that for the 2023 budget to be raised by tax and prior to appropriated surplus, which is $51 million, and you take 1.5 million out of that we're claiming from our 0.25% mortgage tax. That's 3% is being pulled out of our estimated revenues, and that so it has a direct financial impact. How do we make up that gap in our budget if we pull out $1.5 million of revenue? So that needs to be explored in all of this decision making.
We'll work on getting a meeting next week. And can we do it in committee or can we just get them up there? How do you want to do it?
Can I gently suggest that the administrative group kind of sets the table for whatever committee or board, so we can do the foundation work, so that there's information before the committee rather than the committee trying to develop the facts themselves in a meeting?
Is that agreeable?
We have the questions and concerns, so I think.
All right, we'll get it done. We have committees this week. We'll have committees next week too, don't we? Personnel finance. We have a couple of committees next week. We could always piggyback it on to one of those meetings. A lot of people are here. So you have your marching orders. Anybody else wish to comment on anything? Oh, sure. Sure. Come to the mic, state your name for the record, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gary Thornquist, General Manager of Lake George RV Park, right over here for 34 years. Just a few comments. I understand the concerns about the costs and all that. I totally get that. I'd like, if you could, keep an open mind to still merging with CDTA. There can be contracts worked out, stipulations made. I'm in contact with Scott probably every week in the summertime about the service that's provided by Glens Falls Transit. I understand his problems very clearly. We've been cut in service to our facility. We have 2,000 guests a day that need service from their trolley system to go to Lake George. We have employees every day that need to get back and forth to second jobs, to other jobs that rely on the transit system to be dependable. And this past year was absolutely the worst. Our Sunday service got cut completely because Scott lost a driver. Our customers are outraged because we promise a certain level of service to the guests. Our tourism product that we have here has to be strong. It has to ensure that the guests can get around, ensure that we can, what we promise we can deliver. We haven't been able to do that in the last 3 years at least. I understand Scott's problems. I get that. And I'm sure he's doing his best, but what CDTA brings, Glens Falls has 15 drivers. CDTA has 250 drivers. Glens Falls has, I don't know how many buses, 15 buses. CDTA has 250 buses. I mean, it's the economies of scale that they have that can help our service. In regards to the mortgage tax, I understand that's a lot of money. I have to believe in the last 3 years, and maybe it would be good to investigate with our county treasurer that probably that amount is gone up probably at least 40% based on the sales prices in this area of properties being bought up again by Airbnbs, Verbos, all of those people taking a lot of the real estate in this area at a very high price. So I think the funding is probably there if you needed it. But if you decide not to go down that, and that's certainly, I can understand all the differing opinions here. We have to find a way to fix Glens Falls Transit this year because the service is going to be stopped this year. Scott's already told me he's short 8 drivers. That's half his staff. He won't be able to provide any service to our guests or employees. You're going to see J1 workers walking up and down the streets in dangerous areas. Public safety, all those things are gonna be an issue. So I applaud, the board for wanting to step in and try and fix this situation, but it's not an easy fix and it's not just throwing money at it. Scott's told me over and over. I said to Scott, well, what if you paid the drivers $50 an hour? I said, we can make that happen. Let me get bed tax, something to fund it. He says that doesn't make a difference. They're older people that do this driving for him, and they're just not interested in that part of it. He can't find anybody to work nights and weekends, which is when we need it. Our service has been cut probably in half in the last 4 years. We're a day only service where they used to go to 10 o'clock at night. Lake George doesn't benefit by any of our customers riding that service after 6 o'clock at night because that service has been cut. So he has had a contract with CDTA since the pandemic. Where they have agreed to provide drivers. If we can't get something done, or in the meantime, while we're figuring it out, please, we have to negotiate with them to get a contract in place to provide drivers from CDTA at even a higher cost than we need to get this service going. I can't emphasize how important it is to the business community. I sit on the board of the Lake George Chamber of Commerce. We're talking about this all the time, how this is a constant problem. We've had Scott to our meetings. It just has to be solved. And I don't think throwing money at Glens Falls Transit is going to necessarily help it because he has the problems. He said he's had a mechanic job open for a year or more. We've had two trolleys go down in August where he had to come in with a little tiny bus, to operate. And it's just not, with the amount of bed tax we're collecting now, with the tourism product we're trying to offer to our guests, it's just unacceptable to have this service keep getting less and less and less. I would encourage, if there's a committee set up, if there was a business member or two that could be on that committee to somehow have input on how this is. We are very much involved and aware of all the situations that are going on. And I think business members could also provide some insight into what the impacts are to our guests, to our employees, certainly. There is certainly, I agree with Claudia, a huge benefit. We'll be able to get workers coming up from Saratoga, Albany to help us out if you connect with a larger bus system where we don't have that option now with Glens Falls Transit. I've met with Mayor Collins. He's told me that he's in charge of the transit system. The county has nothing to do with it. Scott answers to him. He's had enough of transit. He wants this. Scott wants this. They must have some reason why this is a good idea. Again, I know you're going to look into this, but this sounds like it's going to take a long time to look into and get resolved in one way or the other. And I would just urge you to somehow come up with a short-term solution that we can get through this summer with, because it's going to be incredibly bad, unfortunately. And
all right, we got your point.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? We're going to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.